Well folks, it's the start of 2020, and Battlefield 5 is in a state right now that I can only describe as a little bit confused. The game was going in a very good direction and made some very good changes and updates, but then all of a sudden the TTK change rolled in, and suddenly everybody in Battlefield, or at least the vast majority of players in my opinion, especially the vocal and core community of players, are kind of disenfranchised with the game now. They're a bit done with it. Time to kill changes certainly weren't something that in my opinion went down well. They certainly weren't something that was necessarily needed, and we don't really know what's going to happen next in that department, but it does look like they're here to stay. Now with all of that said, it's the time of year around about now where DICE is back in the office. The start of the year tends to be a little bit slow in Battlefield, but today I wanted to talk about what is coming next for Battlefield 5. Now this video is based on a few potential weapon leaks, as well as the Solomon Islands map that's coming up that we're going to talk about, and perhaps an indication that Battlefield is going to stick around into the Pacific Theater for a little while longer. And I'm going to explain my rationale behind that and explain why I feel that is the case. So to start off with, what do we already know? Well, Solomon Islands is coming to Battlefield 5. It looks like it's going to be the next iteration of the Pacific Theater. It's a dense jungle map, there's been a few screenshots floating around, but ultimately we don't know that much. Solomon Islands appears to be one of the most densely forested or densely foliaged maps we've seen in Battlefield for quite some time, and it looks like it's going to be a very interesting take on the entire Pacific Theater. There's been a couple indications at least that perhaps this could lead to some lighting changes. Maybe Solomon Islands is a very dark map that lacks a lot of sunlight. It's quite difficult to tell, but for the most part it seems that we're going to get a slightly different theatre, so to speak. You know, it is the same Pacific Theatre, but they're trying to do something a little bit different, and I guess that's something we should look forward to. But with that, there has been some leaked weapons, and this more or less confirms that perhaps the Pacific Theater is sticking around for longer than some people anticipated. There have been 9 potential weapons leaked in the game, due to some of the dog tags that appeared in the menu. And these weapons perhaps indicate the Battlefield might stick around in the Pacific Theater for an extended period of time. Now before I dive on into those individual weapon leaks and talk about those and what they are, I actually want to talk about why it's most likely they're going to stay in the Pacific Theater anyway, just because as a matter of things it makes sense. Now, Battlefield always starts slow in the new year, you know, there really isn't a lot going on. I think we'll get Solomon Islands, we'll probably maybe get 1, if we're lucky, 2 more Pacific maps after Solomon Islands, but it's going to be dead quiet from them. The reason for this is because they're probably gearing up towards the next chapter release, which is in June. Of course, they're going to go to EA Play, they're going to go, here's what we've been working on, here's an announcement. Probably they'll let some of the game changers get hands-on with some exclusive footage. It'll be much like what they did with the past 2 maps, which weren't that great, like the Lofton Islands and Province map. That happened last year at EA Play, and I was there getting hands-on with that. But most likely they're going to be gearing up towards the new chapter, whether that's the Eastern Front, whether that's, you know, a entirely indifferent front. Of course, you know, World War II is an expansive war. You've got Africa, you've got the Eastern Front, you've got the Siege of Berlin. I think the Siege of Berlin is probably going to be the last, if not one of the last, theatres to come into the game, because obviously it kind of signals the end of the thing. But ultimately I feel as though the Pacific is going to stick around till about June. So if we see Solomon Islands release around early February, that's January, February, March, April, May, June. So they could probably bridge that gap with 1 more map and the 9 weapons that are coming up. I imagine they probably still have a lot in their locker for the Pacific as well. There's probably some concepts or some ideas that they worked on that haven't been released yet. We've still got things like the Lunge Mine to come as well. But I do feel as though it's going to drag out for a while. I don't think people realise that because the next Battlefield game isn't until 2021, there really is no incentive for DICE to, you know, start pumping out loads of content in a short space of time. You know, I really feel as though you'll have the Pacific now, you'll have Eastern Front perhaps in June, or something of that variety. Then you'll probably have the Fall or Siege of Berlin closer towards the end of this year. And that might be a extended chapter, or they might do another chapter and then the Fall of Berlin at the very start of the year, because then obviously when June 2021 comes around, you've got EA Play again, and they're going to be announcing the brand new Battlefield game. Here's the new Battlefield 6 or whatever it happens to be called, Bad Company 3. Just anything of that variety is going to be happening in that June. So realistically, Battlefield doesn't actually have a lot of time left on the clock, and although it feels as though we've got, you know, a whole 2 years until the next game is out, or roughly 2 years, about a year and 11 months, because Battlefields tend to release on November, October, realistically, we've probably only got 2 chapters left, maybe 3 if we're lucky. I think you're going to see the Pacific Theater carry on, maybe with 1 or 2 maps. Just based on the distance of time, I'd say it's probably much more healthy if they did 2. We'll get Solomon Islands, I'd say, around early February, get the next one maybe March, April, and then just have these 9 or so weapons spread out in between. We'll have a new chapter aimed towards EA Play, just sort of focusing on what EA Play presents and shows off. They're likely going to want to try and flex some muscle as well and say, you know, here's the chapter we're doing, here's what it looks like, here's the next chapter that's coming at the end of the year. But that's about it. So let's dive into these 9 weapons that have been revealed, and to start off with, we have an infrared sniper, which appears to be a suppressed infrared sniper, and again, this kind of points towards what I was talking about with Solomon Islands. Maybe Solomon Islands is perhaps a dark map, and we just aren't aware of that yet. It's quite difficult to tell, but, you know, IR scopes did exist back in the day. They were gigantic things. It seems like an interesting addition, though, because it doesn't really have a lot of use except for that map. We then have the Ithaca shotgun, a standard issue Japanese shotgun. I don't really know what to say, really, in that department. Shotguns are shotguns, and I don't really feel as though many people use them. We then have the M2 carbine, which I believe is the automatic variant of the M1 carbine. So the M1A1 carbine that we have in the game already, which is the semi-auto up to 31 bullet magazine gun, the M2 carbine is its fully automatic cousin. And I think that's going to be a really exciting weapon. I think the Type 2A is a perfect example of full auto weapons perhaps making a comeback in Battlefield 5, and maybe we'll see something similar there. The next up is the data mined model SOD flare pistol. We've seen this through Tempora Real's data mines in the past. We now have it in a dog tag format, but for the most part, it's a flare gun. It's a glorified flare gun at that. It's kind of like a dual chamber shotgun style thing. It's going to spot enemies, but also deal some damage. I'm kind of against this. I don't think we need any more flares in Battlefield 5, but, you know, it wouldn't be DICE if they didn't go, hey, you know what we need? Something that absolutely nobody wants. That tends to be how weapon design appears to happen sometimes. We also have the Type 11 machine gun. This is going to be really cool. It's another Japanese variant machine gun. The Type 11 is a cool looking weapon. I hope they keep it towards the LMG and not the MMG variant. I'm kind of sick of MMGs. I want to see more and more LMGs in the game. And then last but not least is the bazooka. And we saw this in Chapter 4, but of course, it was found out that the weapons in Chapter 4 were designed for specifically the mode that they'd made for 5v5 or whatever, and they just completely bottled it. So, you know, this is finally coming to the game, and of course we still have the lunge mine, which isn't a leak weapon, but we know it's there. And finally, everything else is just melee weapons, various different types of melee weapons, and I'll leave a link to some of those in the description below. But really, it does appear with Chapter 5 ending in January, we're going to see Pacific Part 2 coming in January/February as well. We're going to see a brand new roadmap of Pacific updates that's just going to continue on towards June till we see the next EA Play event. But anywho, folks, that's about it from me today, TheTacticalBrit. I'm not really that fussed about Battlefield 5 right now. In fact, I didn't even enjoy recording this gameplay today. I just sort of did it. So I'm just going to wait until we have something new to play with, really, like Solomon Islands. I hope you guys have been enjoying my other content, like the post-scriptum games, some of the squad stuff. I'm thinking about doing a little bit more of Escape from Tarkov as well. But anywho, folks, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon in another video.